Formally launched in 1994, the Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy brought together First Nations and Métis leaders, Aboriginal organizations, and government ministries in a unique partnership with a common goal of ending violence and improving the health of Aboriginal people through the use of culture-based programs designed and delivered by Aboriginal people.
I was the co-chair of a group that was established to address what was referred to then as family violence. And it eventually became the Aboriginal Family Healing Strategy. In designing the Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy, went back to our traditions, to our cultural teachings, and we had a very strong notion of a vision of where we wanted to go, that we wanted to both end violence and improve health. There were a couple of things in my mind that happened. Of course, the Ontario Native Women's Association had produced a report called Breaking Free, where they were talking about ending the cycles of violence that Aboriginal women were experiencing at the time. The fact of the matter is, back then, in the 80s and before that, and to today, it's a monumental issue dealing with violence in our community.
When this report came out, which stated that 4 out of 5 women have been abused, either physically, verbally, emotionally, and those statistics were really shocking.
And so we began to have these have conversations. We began to build relationships. For all of the working years I had before that, many of the processes kept us separate. You know, you were either First Nations on reserve, or you were, we were never encouraged to sit down and to look in a sense of not only what was different about us, but what was common about us. And this experience was a common experience. There was an opportunity to bring people together. And in the very early days, it was the Federation and the Native Women, a group that existed then called the Ontario Métis Aboriginal Association. The Union of Ontario Indians joined, and eventually Anishinaabe came in, and the Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians, and then Treaty 3. And we began to have these conversations.
When we started, there was no vehicle or mechanism for the provincial government to deal with the issues first faced with First Nations people we're dealing with in the health area. There was a desire and there was discussion about how do we engage. And the one thing the Union of Ontario Indians did was, with our health team, we sat down, we negotiated, and we actually drafted an Aboriginal health policy for the province of Ontario, because they had nothing in existence to do that. The work from there looked at expanding services, much like they have in Oz, the Healthy Babies, looking after educational programs, looking at ways to improve and help get our people a better education on the quality of life and how to make that better. And those things, I think, primarily have all gone forward with tremendous success.
The root of this issue, if we were going to address violence and address health, that we had to look at our identity. And the fundamental issue of our identity, who am I, is found in where I've come from. What are the roots of my culture? What are the roots of my community? What are the relationships that I have? If we were going to address it in a broad sense, then we had to be able to talk about where we were going, and this notion of a strong sense of vision. And then the last life question in this cultural model is, what am I responsible for?
Right from the get-go, I think, when the Oz strategy was started up, we needed traditions and we needed cultures into any of the programming. I don't think people really realize the impact that residential schools had on our people. With the resurgence of us finding out our traditions and our cultures, certainly allows us to know who we are as a people, where do we fit in, and I think when you include that in the strategies, that It makes for better programming, and people are more adept to understanding and accept the programs. We're all diverse in what our needs are, and while some of us may have the same culture and traditions, but we may do it differently. But I think that's one of the important things that the strategy allowed for was the diversity.
But it was there, and so that was the start of discussions to deal with stopping violence against the women, violence against children, and to look at conditions, the nutrition, the physical needs of children within our communities. This was how the Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy came into being, is to deal with those needs. If we look now, it's much broader, but when we look at it, it still gets back to those basic needs, the wellness of our families, because the families are the root of the future generations.
Well, the Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy has meant a great deal to the Métis community and Métis people across Ontario, and I say, certainly my perspective, all Aboriginal people. To be able to have programs in our own communities, provide services in our own communities to and for and by our own people, is a model that should be replicated in other domains as well. It really means a lot to Métis people, Métis citizens in communities. When they can go in to interact with frontline staff who are very professional in their work ethics, but at the same time, have that closeness to them and are seen as one of their peoples.
Very much at the encouragement of then Minister of Health of Frances Lankin. She said, you should come to the Cabinet Committee on Social Development yourselves, because this isn't something that they're going to be able to put in a note for Cabinet, and Cabinet's going to need to understand. You need to come and you need to make them understand. And so we were the very first group, a woman named Carrie Hayward, and I went off to Cabinet, and there we were, and people were shocked. There were no questions around the Cabinet table. It was silent. The chair said, you had us when you started. So then we got invited a couple of weeks later to go to full Cabinet. We presented to full Cabinet, and as they say, it's history.
The Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy has been a sustainable funding source for Aboriginal communities. With 20 years of experience in service delivery, communities have had significant growth and achieved many accomplishments.
We have improved health. We have a better network with mainstream service providers. Having people who work in the community who often have a lived experience. This is someone who you can relate to, who you can tell your story to, because they've actually walked in your moccasins.
Compliments to the architects of the program, because it's, each of the cultures, First Nations, Métis, and even within those jurisdictions have variances in how they want to approach healing in their communities. And having that flexibility is extremely important.
Birthing centers and the work that Six Nations of Grand River did leading that has absolutely had impact across the system. The engagement of a broader family and community in that process is phenomenal.
We've lived what the women are going through. We're part of the community that we serve, and we've experienced a lot of the things that they're going through now, so we know how it is. Instead of just talking at them how to change things, we try to make sure that they feel like they don't have to hide who they are. They can be proud of who they are. And that helps too as well, because that's going to boost their confidence, not only as a Native woman, but also, like a Native mother and a Native clan member, and it just radiates, it just ripples through the whole community. The babies are different that are born through here. They're different. They carry themselves different. They have a different way of thinking.
Oz has been at the forefront to really say it's our culture that's important, it's our language, and in order for us to work together, we need to really bring that into the programs. We're able to bring in our own teachers, and our own people. Maybe they don't have the recognized qualifications, but they do in our traditional healing methods.
People come to Ganokwasha, a lot of them are searching. They're searching, they've experienced a trauma. They're searching and they're trying to find out who they are. We provide that cultural piece in all our, whether it's individual counseling, whether it's our groups, whether it's our presentation. But I do believe that Oz is probably our funding source that fosters that the most, that understands the need the most of all our funding sources. We don't have to educate Oz about the culture.
I think there has been a tremendous impact from the work we've done in the Healing Wellness Strategy at the reinvigoration of our cultural notions.
I can see a little bit more of community awareness on issues. I can see some of the issues that were taboo to talk about are coming out, and as a result of that, we try to address those issues.
People in the communities had to roll up their sleeves, had to have difficult conversations. These were not concepts that were readily talked about in our community at the time, and frontline workers have opened up that conversation. They've opened up that safe space.
I've done a lot of work with men who are convicted of domestic crimes and trying to reintegrate them into their family or to help them with a new start. But the goal is always to reduce violence against Aboriginal women. Yeah, I think Oz has worked to reduce family violence because it gives men a place to come, help them with access traditional healing. And I think that's the biggest thing that they're looking for, is looking for those sweat lodges and those pipe ceremonies and those sharing circles. That's what they're really missing in their life.
Basically, Six Nations, where we are here right now, there is a lot of family violence that's been passed down through generations, like from residential school time, and it's created these unhealthy cycles. So Oz has helped fund the counselors and the program so we can start to break up those cycles. So we're going to stop the unhealthy ones and create healthy cycles. So when these kids start a family of their own, they can create a healthy cycle, and hopefully we can see a ripple effect through like the generations to come.
I was in a dark place in my life, nobody to talk to. So I came here. I phoned the Friendship Center and I asked for a counselor. And my counselor is helping me with my fears, is helping me with my family problems, you know, is helping me, you know, like if I need to cry, I can cry. It's really helped me find myself, find who I am, you know, as being Aboriginal, you know, because I grew up in a white society. I got taken off the reserve when I was 4, and I was alone. And, you know, growing up in school, being alone. The work that I'm getting from here is going into my family, and the love that I'm receiving, and it's helping them.
Had some very significant commitment in terms of resources by the government, who took a bigger risk because we had never done this before either. The Healing Wellness Strategy has contributed enormously over the last 20 years to our community, and real changes have occurred in many, many respects. We've done a good job. We can be proud of it.
As we look towards the future, we will continue to work in collaboration with our Aboriginal and ministry partners. Although we have many accomplishments, there is much more work to be done in ending violence. We will continue to learn from our experiences and build upon our successes to achieve our shared commitment of safer and healthier Aboriginal communities.
Let us work together, you know, to resolve any of the dilemmas we're dealing with. And we've come far, but we still need to continue. You know, we're a lot stronger if we can work together. We have enough outside forces trying to separate us and take things away.
We need to participate in the healing process for individuals, families, and communities, and to ensure that we're doing what we can to support their path to wellness.
20 years later, they're coming to us, asking us for our advice and how we're able to work with men, because they realize in order to heal the family from family violence and abuse, everyone needs to heal. That's really how Oz has impacted Gunaquasha over the years. And like I said, it's working.
We now have full families in service, you know, and that would never have happened 20 years ago. We might have had a woman or a man. But now we have moms and dads and their children and grandparents.
I've seen people, when they so-called touch the culture, they start to get well. All three spheres, the mind, the body, the spirit, is cared for in the Haudenosaunee way. It's up to us providers to serve them in their culture.
The Oz strategy, overall is working well, absolutely. What other areas, should we be looking to pursue that would continue on this theme of a holistic health environment? And so, I would say that, certainly within the Métis Nation of Ontario since 2012, we put a focus on children and youth.
I think the ministry can continue to evolve their relationship with the partners. I think they may be on track if I'm reading things correctly, that they're actually sitting down and listening to what the partners are saying.
Our people seen a lot of good things coming out of the Oz strategy, and that gave us the incentive to push forward and make it move and continue to be operational as it is today. And partnership approaches, finding solutions is the best way, and it's the only way that will work as I see going forward, because you can't visualize what impact someone has on their life unless you live where they live. And if you're making policy without being there, encountering the climate, the adversities, the different things people have, you'll never get it right. And there is no one shoe that fits all.
The frontline people at Oz have to be commended for being so innovative and creative, of trying to, transcend different programs, integrate some of this activity, support each other's programming to make things happen in our communities. In order to have a prosperous, vital community that's has a lot of vitality to it, you need a healthy community. You need healthy people. Otherwise, the rest doesn't work. How can you have strong economies? How can you have strong governance? How can you have strong spiritual and cultural dimensions in your community if your people aren't healthy?
My sincere gratitude for the very dedicated and hard work that they do in local communities to advance the healing and wellness of individuals, families, and communities, and to thank them for their long-standing commitment to this very important work that they do.
I wish the strategy well, done a good job, and more needs to be done, so don't slack off. Keep up the work.
If we know that our people need service, then I don't care whether it's a one-room, anything, as long as it's safe, and it will come. And to believe that we have a right to this service.
We just had a tragedy here this past week, and my cousin said, because it was her family too, she says, I think I'll be able to get away. I think I'll be able to get out. She's a outpost nurse, because there was another tragedy in another community, so most of her community had gone to that tragedy. I thought, how sad, how incredibly, incredibly sad that, You know, it takes a tragedy for her to be able to get away, to come home to another tragedy, you know. So I know it's all over the place, and we just have to hang in there and keep going back to the teachings, you know, that help us maintain through whatever happens, you know, those values and beliefs that they haven't gone away. They're buried, you know, maybe in some communities, but they're there. We just gotta dig them up.
Come out and see what we're about. You'll even be more supportive, I think, if you really saw what we do. But keep up the awesome work, because so many women go to your services, like say those Aboriginal health centers as well as the shelters, you know, like it's such amazing work. We're so fortunate to be able to have Oz to do that, you know, and as well, your ministry too as well, right? It's really been amazing.
I would like to acknowledge Carol Hill. She was my technician that went to the Joint Management Committee meetings with me, and I think without her support and behind the scenes work, who knows whereabouts the association would be, and she is missed.
I just want to encourage the frontline workers, continue to advocate, continue to find ways to support their clients. They're doing a good job. I know that. They're doing their best. I haven't done migrants. We done that to kaya batas friendship centers. I said to skate to go man is to go shoot to go to anymore. Go man I got pagitena mutiga nesta. Nihten mutiga negagi kenige. Atege beschreibe ge gona askona shiona. Nesta boye nesta askona nesta ugmau nestege sagos maga. Sisige tutta ma hona ge kai shoot to go in no chiga no ma ge bone go wichakuk. Ego maga chiga no tamatan de go shanu tebanya. Ego maga ya wisig skata no buya chbun timing wes mitana ya wa ano sige shiga chiga no mutma ga shattsyan ga shabatsan with the Friendship Center. You guys.
Well, I'd like to first of all congratulate the Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy on 20 years of amazing success. The Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy has, influenced and touched and benefited like thousands of Aboriginal people across Ontario. It truly is an amazing success story, and certainly 20 years of development, providing quality services to Aboriginal people is something to be celebrated. For the people who are engaged in this on a day-to-day basis, the frontline workers, you've done an amazing job. You truly have. And as I said, as somebody who's a leader who hears from the clients and how you've affected their life, I can't imagine as the direct service provider how rewarding that must be, because I know as a leader it's certainly rewarding to hear those positive comments.
I want to thank them, all the frontline workers and the organizers, for all of these projects that have been implemented. I think that they have been instrumental in improving the health care and status of our communities.
Keep up the good work. I know it can be really hard, seeing and hearing the things that we do, but you got to remember to take care of yourself, and even if you feel like you're not getting through to someone, you might not see the changes right away, but don't give up hope. Know that they are listening, even if they're not showing it. And if you, like I always say to my counselors, if we run a presentation in a school and we get through to one kid out of the 50 or 200, however many are in the presentation, he goes home, tells his mom how he feels, or whatever's going on with the child, we did our job.
Well, I'd like to offer my congratulations to the Aboriginal Healing and Wellness Strategy. I think that they've done a lot of good work over the 20 years. So kudos to the ministry leadership, the First Nations leadership, to all the technicians, and to right down to the frontline workers, because without any of those people, I don't think the strategy would have lasted as long as it did.
Oz was able to have that insight to know that that need was there. So I want to thank you for having that insight, because our men are special too, just as much as our women and our children are.
Thank you very much. You know, you've helped me a lot. You know, if it wasn't for you guys, I was contemplating suicide because it's too much on the plate. Not too much on my plate, too much wrong. And thank you very much.
They're a movement, whether they recognize it or not. They're part and very much have contributed to the healing movement that we're watching occur in our communities, in First Nations, in urban areas, in Métis communities, in the Inuit community in Ottawa. And it's so wonderful to see. It fills our spirit.